let's be real for a second. We live in a timeline that feels like it's being written by a room full of drunk monkeys on typewriters.
That's putting it mildly.
I mean, there are headlines you read, you blink, you check the URL to make sure you didn't stumble onto a satire site, and then you just stare at the wall.
Yeah.
It's that feeling of, is this a glitch in the simulation? Did I take the wrong meds this morning?
The fever dream headlines. We've had a lot of them lately. A lot.
We have. But if we are ranking them, we are looking for the absolute peak of what the actual fuck is happening, we have to go back to August 2019.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly where you're going with this.
That was the month the President of the United States decided, seemingly out of the blue, that he wanted to buy Greenland.
It sounded like a bad joke or, a real estate hustle gone completely off the rails. Hey, Denmark, nice island you got there. Looks like a bit of a fixer-upper. Lots of ice, not many people. How much for the deed?
Exactly. It was treated like a foreclosure auction. And naturally, the internet just lost its collective mind.
Oh, instantly.
We had the memes of Trump Tower nukes, big gold letters just slapped onto a glacier. We had jokes about building casinos next to polar bear dens. It was funny. It was completely ridiculous.
It was perfect late-night monologue fodder. And we all laughed. We all pointed at it and laughed.
And while we were laughing, we were missing the point entirely.
Because that's the trick, isn't it? That's the entire hustle.
While the world was giggling at the sheer absurdity of buying a country in the 21st century like it was a used car, the machinery underneath, the U.S. military, the intelligence apparatus, the corporate raiders, they weren't laughing.
No, not at all. They were executing a ruthless, multi-decade strategy.
That's the pivot we need to make today. Because if you look past the buffoonery of the headline, you find something much, much darker.
The joke was actually a masterclass in misdirection.
So today, we are going to unpack two distinct but completely overlapping realities. Reality one. Greenland isn't just a big block of ice. It is the fourth coast of North America. It is a vital strategic choke point in a new Cold War that involves nuclear submarines, Russian aggression, and the raw materials that run every single piece of tech in your pocket right now.
And reality two. The public spectacle, the I want to buy your island routine, was a textbook information operation, a dead cat strategy designed to strangle the news cycle during a moment of supreme domestic peril for the administration.
We're talking Jeffrey Epstein, a looming recession, and a government that needed a massive distraction and needed one fast. This isn't a geography lesson, folks. This is a story about nuclear secrets buried in the ice, corporate espionage, and how to weaponize the media cycle.
Yeah.
It's going to get a little dark, and the language is going to reflect the messy, frankly fucked up reality of geopolitics. So buckle up.
Let's start with the obsession, because despite how it was framed in 2019, the idea of owning Greenland wasn't a spontaneous thought from a reality TV star, not by a long shot.
No, it wasn't. We act like it was this unique moment of madness, but the U.S. has been trying to slide into Greenland's DMs for over a century. This isn't a new crush. This is a full-on stalker situation.
Since 1867, to be precise, Secretary of State Seward, the same guy who bought Alaska, he commissioned a report on Greenland's strategic value.
Seward again. This guy was playing Risk while everyone else was playing checkers.
He absolutely was. He saw it as part of a comprehensive American empire. The idea was to bracket North America, Alaska on the Pacific, Greenland on the Atlantic, total continental dominance.
It's manifest destiny, but with more frostbite. And probably a lot more scurvy.
Precisely. And that idea just never went away. It just went dormant for a while, then it ramped up significantly after World War II.
Right, when the enemy changed from, the wilderness to the Soviets.
Exactly. In 1946, the Truman administration didn't just tweet about it, they put money on the table. They secretly offered Denmark $100 million in gold bars to buy the island outright.
Gold bars. That is some straight-up Bond villain level of transaction. Here's a suitcase of bullion. Give me the glacier.
The logic was survival. You have to remember the mindset of 1946. The world had just blown itself up twice in 30 years. The U.S. viewed Greenland not as a sovereign neighbor, but as a military extension of the continent.
An unsinkable aircraft carrier.
A protectorate essential for stopping the Soviets. They needed a place to park strategic air command bombers so they could glass the Soviet industrial heartland if the Cold War turned hot. It was about bomber range. Simple as that.
But purchasing it didn't happen. Denmark said no.
Denmark said no.
Politely.
So the U.S. decided if they couldn't buy the house, they'd just occupy the guest room and refuse to leave.
That brings us to the 1951 Defense of Greenland Agreement. It gave the U.S. exclusive rights to vast defense areas, most notably Thule Air Base. But that wasn't enough. And this is where we get to the what the fuck moment of the story.
Oh, this part is wild. Project Iceworm.
Project Iceworm. Even the name sounds like something out of a bad sci-fi novel. It really does. So in 1959, the Army Corps of Engineers shows up and starts building Camp Century. And the cover story they sold to the world, and to the Danish government, mind you, was that it was a wholesome polar science lab.
They went all out on the propaganda. I mean, they released films with these upbeat 1950s narrators showing soldiers living under the ice. They built a library, a chapel, a hobby shop, a movie theater.
They made it look like Epcot Center under a glacier.
It was billed as the city under the ice. Look at American ingenuity, conquering the elements for science. It was incredibly wholesome on the surface.
But that was total bullshit.
Complete fabrication. The science was real, but it was a cover. The real mission, the classified mission, was to bore a network of tunnels covering 52,000 square miles.
Let's put that in perspective. 52,000 square miles. That is 3 times the size of Denmark itself.
3 times.
Yeah.
The plan was to hide 600 Iceman nuclear missiles on railway cars inside the glacier.
600 nuclear missiles. Just cruise around on trains inside the ice sheet, like a subterranean subway from hell.
The strategic logic, from a cold-blooded perspective, was brilliant. If the missiles were constantly moving under hundreds of feet of ice, they would be invisible to Soviet satellites and invulnerable to a first strike.
It's the ultimate dead-hand switch.
It was the ultimate ambush predator tactic. If the Soviets wiped out the continental U.S., the ice would open up and 600 missiles would end the world. A guaranteed second strike capability.
And the kicker, they didn't tell Denmark.
Not a word. Denmark had a strict nuclear-free policy, no nukes on Danish soil, period. And meanwhile, the U.S. is downstairs in the basement, literally carving out a city to house enough firepower to turn the northern hemisphere into radioactive ash.
The audacity of that is just, it's breathtaking.
It was a massive fundamental violation of trust and sovereignty. But nature had the final say. The engineers, for all their brilliance, forgot one very important thing. Glaciers move.
The ice is alive.
The ice was alive. It started deforming the tunnels, twisting the steel tracks, crushing the reactor room. The ice just wouldn't cooperate. They had to abandon the base in 1967.
But they didn't clean up after themselves, did they? They didn't pack out what they packed in.
No. They just walked away. They assumed the snow would just keep falling and bury their mess forever. A permanent tomb.
And what a mess it was.
They left behind 200,000 liters of diesel fuel, massive amounts of PCBs, which are just horrific carcinogens, and worst of all, 240,000 liters of radioactive wastewater from the portable nuclear reactor they had running down there.
A portable nuclear reactor in the ice.
A portable nuclear reactor, and they just left the waste.
And here is the dark cosmic irony. Climate change. The very thing that half the politicians denying this mess say isn't real is melting the ice. That tomb is opening up.
It's thawing. And scientists are now projecting that by the end of this century, that site will be a net melter. All that toxic sludge and radioactive piss is going to wash out into the ocean.
It is a physical manifestation of betrayal. A toxic legacy literally emerging from the ice half a century later.
It's a legacy that haunts the relationship to this day. But if you think burying a reactor was reckless, we need to talk about what happened in the sky above Thule.
The broken arrow. This is where the risks stopped being theoretical and got very, very real.
And very, very radioactive.
So set the scene for us. What were the stakes at this point in the Cold War?
We're in January 1968. This is the absolute height of the Cold War. The U.S. is running something called Chrome Dome missions.
Chrome Dome.
It's an airborne alert program. B-52 bombers flying 247 loaded with live thermonuclear weapons, just circling the Arctic, waiting for the go code to strike Moscow.
Just think about the madness of that. 24 hours a day, flying apocalypse machines are just circling over the ice. It's a numbers game. Eventually, something has to go wrong. Gravity wins.
And on January 21st, 1968, it did. A B-52, call sign Hobo 28, caught fire in the cabin. The crew had to eject. The plane carrying 4 B-28FI thermonuclear bombs went down and crashed onto the sea ice near Thule Air Base.
Jesus. 4 H-bombs.
4. Each one many, many times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Now, thankfully, the nuclear warheads didn't detonate in a nuclear yield. We didn't get a mushroom cloud.
Small mercies.
Very small. But the conventional explosives inside the bombs did detonate on impact, and that pulverized the plutonium cores.
So instead of a nuclear explosion, you just have a radiological dirty bomb effect. You've got pulverized plutonium, one of the most toxic substances known to man scattered across the ice in a massive plume.
Exactly. The cleanup was called Project Crested Ice. It was a complete nightmare. You have Danish and American workers in the pitch black of the polar night, in 40 degrees below zero weather, scraping contaminated snow and wreckage into tanks.
I can't even imagine the health consequences for those guys.
They were catastrophic for many of them. They were promised it was safe. It wasn't.
And there's a mystery here, right? A loose end that's never been tied up.
Yeah. A very dangerous loose end. For decades, there have been whistleblower accounts from people involved in the cleanup, declassified documents that hint at it. They couldn't account for all the parts of all 4 bombs.
What does that mean?
The speculation, and it's strong, credible speculation, is that the heat from the burning jet fuel and the detonating explosives melted a hole in the ice. And the secondary stage of one of the bombs, the thermonuclear part, sank.
So there's a nuke at the bottom of the bay.
Potentially. A significant component of a thermonuclear weapon is, in all likelihood, still sitting at the bottom of North Star Bay.
That is insane.
And the political fallout was immediate. This crash proved to the world, and specifically to the Danes, that the U.S. was flying live nukes over Greenland, directly and flagrantly violating Denmark's sovereignty and their nuclear-free policy.
The trust was already broken by ice form. This just shattered it.
But the precedent it set was even more important, and this is key to understanding the 2019 incident. It established a hard rule. U.S. strategic needs supersede local laws. Period. If Washington needs to put a nuke there, they will put a nuke there, and they'll apologize or not later.
Which brings us to today. Because we aren't fighting the Soviets anymore, but the chessboard hasn't changed. In fact, it's gotten a lot more crowded.
We've moved from the Cold War to what some analysts are calling the ice curtain. The strategic pivot right now is focused on something called the GIUK gap.
The Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom gap. It sounds like a clothing store for hikers, but it's actually the most important piece of naval real estate in the North Atlantic.
It is the naval choke point. It's the only way for the Russian Northern Fleet, based up in Murmansk, to get into the open Atlantic Ocean.
And if they get past it.
If Russian submarines can slip past that line, Greenland to Iceland to the UK, they are in our backyard. They are in the open Atlantic. From there, they can hit the U.S. East Coast with submarine-launched cruise missiles.
And the Russians aren't sailing rusted-out buckets anymore. These aren't the submarines from a Tom Clancy novel in the 90s.
Not at all. They have the new Yasen-class submarines. These things are incredibly quiet, they are lethal, and they are armed with Kala missiles. The U.S. Navy has called them the most capable enemy submarines they've ever faced.
And it's not just subs.
No. On top of that, Russia has spent a fortune building the Nagurskoye Air Base. It's their ice curtain base on Franz Josef Land. A 2,500-meter runway right on the edge of the Arctic. They can land nuclear bombers there. They're projecting power southward right at that GIUK gap.
So Greenland isn't just a buffer zone anymore, it's the goalie. If the goalie steps out for a smoke, we lose the game.
That's a perfect analogy. But it's not just Russia we're worried about. We have a new player crashing the Arctic party.
China, which calls itself a near-Arctic state. Which, look, I'm no cartographer, but I've seen a map. That is geographically absolute horseshit. That's like me saying I'm a near millionaire because I walked past a bank.
It is geopolitically ambitious nonsense, yes. But they are deadly serious about it. And this is where the panic in Washington really started to set in. It wasn't just a hypothetical threat anymore.
It became real.
It became very real in 2016. A Chinese company with links to the state tried to buy an abandoned naval base in Greenland, a place called Grünedal.
A private purchase. Just business, nothing to see here. We just want this old Cold War naval base for reasons.
Right. But in China, there is no such thing as a purely private strategic purchase. The U.S. intelligence community looked at this and had a collective heart attack. They realized, if that sale goes through, the Chinese military has a logistics hub and a potential deep water port inside the U.S. security perimeter.
Right on the Atlantic side of the GIUK gap.
So what did they do?
They panicked. Washington basically put a gun to Denmark's head, metaphorically, and forced them to kill the sale. The Danish government had to step in, buy the base themselves, and nationalize it just to keep the Chinese out.
They realized that the free market was going to sell their national security down the river to the highest bidder.
That was the wake-up call. That was the moment the Pentagon realized they couldn't just leave Greenland alone and assume it would stay friendly. If they didn't lock it down, China would buy it piece by piece.
And piece by piece is literal, because this isn't just about bases and runways. It's about the rocks, the dirt, the stuff in the ground.
A resource war.
Mm.
This is the quiet part of the purchase that matters more than all the diplomatic shouting. We are talking about rare earth elements.
REs, the vitamins of modern technology.
Explain that. What are they, and why do they matter so much?
They're a group of 17 elements on the periodic table, and they are absolutely essential for, well, everything. You want an F-35 fighter jet, the magnets and the guidance systems need rare earths. You want an iPhone, the screen, the speaker, the vibration motor, all need rare earths.
Wind turbines, electric cars.
All of it. The green energy transition is completely dependent on them. They are the bedrock of 21st century technology.
And we have a problem. A big one.
A huge one. Right now, China controls the processing for 80 to 90% of the global rare earth market. They don't have all the mines, but they have the refineries.
You have a chokehold.
They have a chokehold on the future of Western technology and defense. They could, in theory, turn off the tap tomorrow and cripple our entire economy. The U.S. is desperate to break that grip, and Greenland is the answer. It's one of the largest untapped deposits of rare earths outside of China.
Which brings us to the tale of two minds, because this is a perfect example of how the game is actually played. Behind the curtain, you have Kumafjeld and Tanbreez.
Kumafjeld is a massive deposit, huge potential, and it was backed by a Chinese-owned company called Shengye Resources. For years, it looked like a done deal. China was about to get a massive, secure source of rare earths right in NATO's backyard.
But it had a fatal flaw.
It had a fatal flaw.
Hey.
It's full of uranium, radioactive dirt.
Which is a political nightmare.
It became a massive political issue in Greenland. The 2021 Greenlandic election was fought almost entirely over this single mine. The party that won, the Inuit Ataqatigiit Party, they ran on a platform of environmental protection. One of the first things they did was pass a law banning uranium mining.
Which effectively told the Chinese, get the hell out.
It killed the Kvanefjeld project dead. China's foothold was gone, just like that. But just a few miles away, there is another mine, a place called Tanbreez.
And let me guess, Tanbreez is special.
It is. It has the heavy rare earths we need, the really valuable stuff like dysprosium and terbium, but it has negligible uranium. It's clean by comparison. The political poison pill isn't there.
And who swooped in to pick up that prize while all the attention was on the Chinese mine failing?
Critical Metals Corp., an American-led company, a financial proxy for U.S. and Western strategic interests. While the media was still making jokes about Trump buying the island, these guys were quietly moving to acquire the Tanbreez mine. The U.S. government's Export-Import Bank threw $120 million at it to grease the wheels.
So let's unpack this. The headline was, Trump wants to buy Greenland. Everyone laughs. The diplomats scream. But under the table, the U.S. government, through its financial arms, effectively bought the contents of Greenland.
Precisely. They didn't need to buy the government. They didn't need the headache of administering a welfare state or dealing with social services in Nuke. They just needed the rocks. They secured the resource supply chain. It was a corporate coup disguised as a diplomatic incident.
Which brings us to the most cynical and frankly brilliant part of this whole saga, the distraction itself, the dead cat.
The dead cat strategy. It's a term from the dark arts of political communication attributed to the Australian strategist Lynton Crosby, who worked for Boris Johnson.
And the theory is pretty simple and pretty gross.
It is. The theory is, if you are losing an argument, if the facts are against you, if the news cycle is killing you, you take a dead cat and you throw it on the dining room table.
Because everyone is going to scream, holy shit, there's a dead cat on the table.
Exactly. They will be so horrified, so confused, and so viscerally focused on the dead cat that they will stop talking about whatever it was that was causing you grief a minute before. The cat dominates everything.
So let's look at the dining room table in August 2019. Because the table was covered in some really, really bad stuff for the administration.
The convergence of crises was almost perfect. It was a perfect storm of bad news.
First, you have the body.
August 10th. Jeffrey Epstein is found dead in his cell.
The suicide, in quotes.
The official narrative was crumbling instantly. The security cameras outside his cell malfunctioned. The 2 guards assigned to him were asleep. He'd taken off suicide watch against protocol.
I mean, it didn't pass the sniff test for anyone.
Not at all. And the conspiracy theories weren't just on the fringe. They were implicating the entire global political elite. Clinton circles, Trump circles, British royalty. The Department of Justice was under immense fire. It was a potential legitimacy crisis for the entire system.
People were asking questions that very powerful people did not want answered. And then just 4 days later, the money starts to go sideways.
August 14th, the yield curve inverts. Now, for the non-finance nerds out there, that's the #1 most reliable predictor of a recession. It's been a flawless signal for decades.
And the market reacted.
The Dow dropped 800 points in a single day. The headline everywhere was Trump recession. And for a president who had staked his entire reputation on the stock market, that is a mortal political wound.
So you've got a massive political scandal and a looming economic crisis.
And on top of that, you have the foreign policy failures. The Hong Kong airport was shut down by pro-democracy protests. You had fears of another Tiananmen Square. Iran was shooting down U.S. drones and seizing tankers in the Gulf. The administration looked weak on the world stage.
The walls were closing in. The argument was being lost on every front.
Time to find a cat.
A really big frozen cat.
August 15th, the Buy Greenland story leaks to the Wall Street Journal, attributed to sources in the White House. August 18th, Trump confirms it on camera to reporters. It's something we talked about.
And just like that, the pivot happened.
Instantly. The media, which has the attention span of a gnat on meth, switched on a dime. The complex, boring discussions about bond yields, gone. The dark, disturbing questions about who visited Epstein's island, gone. Replaced by 247 coverage of, can you believe he wants to buy an island?
It sucked all the oxygen out of the room. It was absurd enough to be irresistible for cable news.
And they kept it going. This is the second act of the strategy, the theater of disrespect.
Right. It's not enough to just throw the cat. You have to poke it with a stick.
Exactly. When the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, very reasonably called the idea absurd, Trump didn't just let it go. He canceled a state visit to Denmark. And then he called her nasty.
That word, nasty, he uses that like a trigger. It's a key word.
It's a calculated trigger. It's designed to provoke a reaction. By picking a fight with a friendly European leader, he turned a predatory acquisition attempt into a grievance narrative about respecting America. He rallied his base. They're laughing at us, folks. The elites in Europe don't respect us.
It extended the news cycle for another week. It became a whole diplomatic feud.
So the Epstein story gets buried on page 6. The recession talk vanishes because, in the interim, the market stabilized while everyone was looking at Greenland. The dead cat worked.
It worked perfectly.
It worked perfectly, and it's not a one-time thing. We saw this tactic resurface later in the 2024-2026 timeline. The administration started threatening tariffs on Europe over the Greenland issue.
Which, again, on the surface seems insane. Why tariff your allies over something that happened years ago?
Because it fractures NATO unity, it creates noise, it distracts from other issues like the ongoing war in Ukraine or domestic unrest at home. And under the cover of that trade war noise, they can push through the quiet deals like the final funding packages for the Tanbreez mine.
It creates a fog of war in the media, where the real corporate takeovers can happen without any scrutiny.
It's insidious, and it's cynical as hell.
It is geopolitics.
Yeah.
So we get to the end of this deep dive, and we have to ask the central question. Was it a psyop, or was it a real strategy?
That is a false dichotomy. It was both.
The dead cat was the cover for the burglary.
That's the perfect way to put it. The public spectacle, the absurdity, the memes, the insults, that was the psyop. It was a psychological operation designed to manipulate the information environment and distract the public.
But while that was happening,
the deep state machinery, the Pentagon, the intelligence agencies, their resource strategists in the Commerce Department, they were using that cover to do the real work.
they secured the radar bases, they got the funding to upgrade Thule, they locked down the Fourth Coast, they bought the Tanbreez mine to cut China out of the Arctic resource loop.
While we were busy laughing at the clown show, they were robbing the bank. The U.S. effectively and quietly annexed the strategic value of Greenland without ever changing a flag or signing a treaty.
And that is the terrifying brilliance of it. It leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What are we looking at right now? What is the ridiculous headline dominating your feed today?
Is it actually important? Or is it just another dead cat on the table rotting in plain sight, while the real moves, the moves that will shape the next 50 years, are being made in the shadows?
Next time you see a headline that makes you say, that's completely batshit crazy,
Yeah.
maybe don't just laugh. Ask yourself, what am I not supposed to be looking at right now?
Because usually the joke is on you.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Keep your eyes open.
And watch out for flying cats.